often when we're working on ourselves, we do feel this huge level of resistance come up within us that wants to fight it. I've explained in previous videos that that really is our ego protecting us from change, the fear of change, the unknown, the uncertainty moving forward. And it's not an egotistical thing. Okay, so first of all, we need to know the difference between the behavior of someone who is acting egotistically and our relationship with the word ego, because often when we hear the word ego, we can feel quite offended. Our ego is not an egotistical thing. It is a part of us that helps protect us. Okay. And that's where our resistance lies when we try to change our habits and our behavior, our thinking, our beliefs. Okay. And we often hear everybody talk about fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn. Perhaps you may have even heard of fawn, different ways that we can react in difficult situations. But actually, there's a lot more than just those four. So I wanted to go through those today and explain the 7 areas that we can really come up against resistance when we're trying to change. Okay. So we'll go through some that you've heard, and then there'll be some that you haven't. And I'll explain each one. And I hope you find this very useful. And perhaps when you're listening, you could potentially identify where you think you're sitting currently at the moment. So there's fleeing, okay, flight, flee, avoiding change. So that's distracting yourself, shiny object syndrome, looking elsewhere, pretending that you're busy, avoiding the situation, okay? So there's avoiding change. Then there's fight. So you might argue against change. So this is when perhaps somebody has questioned you in a great way to help you move forward, but you kind of have an excuse for it. There's a reason for it. You're arguing against why you don't have to do that thing or should do that thing, and that what you're doing is actually fine. Okay, so there's fighting against the change. I know I've done that a lot in the past. Then there's flopping. Flopping is when you feel you've signed up for something, you've got yourself a coach, you've done that membership, you've started that diet, you're really excited, you really want the change, but then after a while you flop, you lose your energy for it. And that's when you withdraw from the change process. You might still be in the process, you might still be in a coaching session with me or another client, you might be in the gym, but you've withdrawn physically and emotionally. You're there, but you're not quite there. You're not completely committed. Okay, so that's when you flop. Freeze. That's when we're not completely true to ourselves and those that are helping us. So it might be that we're withholding information needed to process the change. Now, for whatever reason, as to why we're withholding the information, it could be that you're worried about telling somebody something that they may judge you for. Okay, so a lot of us are so worried about other people judging us. So we withhold the information, but beneath that, the real reason why we're withholding the information, our ego and the resistance to the change happening anyway. Okay, so again, it falls down to resisting that change. Then we have flapping. Okay, so we have the flop when we withdraw from the process. And then we have the flap, and that's when we're sharing our dissatisfaction with others, so we're flapping. And whether it be loved ones, friends, families, we're just flapping. We're dissatisfied, and we're perhaps suggesting why this new process that you took on isn't working for you. Okay. Then there's forgetting. Forgetting is key, because one of the main reasons why a lot of us struggle with setting up new behaviors, habits, and thinkings for ourselves is the huge gap between our conscious and our subconscious mind. Now, whilst that is another video entirely, which I can't wait to do for you, that gap is where we forget stuff. And one of the reasons why we do continually fail to set up great new habits is not because of a will of not wanting to do it. We forget to do it because we got busy, you know, something else come up. But there's a deeper reason why we're forgetting things. And you know, I love to go deeper. We avoid thinking about it until it's inevitable. We're putting it off. Okay, trying to avoid thinking about putting ourselves in an uncomfortable situation. And then there's follow. Carrying on being comfortable with what's not making you happy. It's interesting. I find this one the most fascinating because our ego is scared. It's protecting us. It doesn't want us to step outside the comfort zone. It doesn't want us to be uncomfortable. Okay. Yet, by just carrying on being comfortable in a place where you're not happy, is in effect keeping you in discomfort. So, for example, let's talk about relationships. Let's say you are unhappy with the situation. Let's say it's a very difficult, toxic, or maybe even abusive relationship. You're very, very uncomfortable. You're experiencing pain and discomfort. But your ego is keeping you there because it fears the unknown, because that would be uncomfortable. So do you see how there is a huge gap between your emotional mind, your logical mind, your conscious mind, and your subconscious mind? And the amazing, most powerful shift that you can do for yourself is get into somatic healing, which is why I do what I do for you when I help clients, is because we can bridge that gap, ladies. We can bridge the gap between your subconscious and your conscious mind by using a variety of modalities. Have you ever perhaps experienced, and I am not suggesting that this type of profession is not good, so don't get me wrong here, but have you ever experienced a session where you've perhaps had some counseling and the other party has sat there and listened to you and you've walked out the door feeling like, well, that actually didn't really help me. I was sat there and I was just talking about the same old stuff I moan to my friends about. And it didn't help. There is a huge difference between counseling, psychotherapy, and coaching. Okay. And they all have their absolute purpose. They are all very important. Whilst they are all very important and all very different, which is important to understand, they are mostly a talking-based therapy. And somatic healing helps your body connect with your brain so that you can help your body release the tension, the trauma, and make the new connections and new messages and new associations that you want your brain to believe. So my message is, have a variety of modalities and you explore as many as you can and you do the ones that work for you. Okay, there is not one method and there is not one therapy out there that can just help you on its own. Okay, you need to have a variety. And in somatic healing, somatic coaching, that's what I do. I bring all of my different skills to the front, depending on how you turn up that day. Might be, we might do a little bit of hypnotherapy together. We might do some acupressure. We might do some emotional freedom technique. We might just do some talking. Okay. Everything works together to help you unleash what's holding you back and what you're feeling scared of. Okay. So I really hope listening through those 7 Fs, that's what I call them, the 7 Fs, the 7 Fs to resisting change. And where do you think you lie with those 7 Fs? What do you know that you tend to do the most? Like I said, I've probably done all of them, to be honest, but definitely fighting, arguing against change, freezing, withholding information, forgetting, avoiding thinking about it. In fact, yeah, let's just say I've definitely gone through all 7. So I hope that that information helps you, because again, knowing why we behave the way we behave is step 1. Now, when we become aware of that, we can start putting new habits into place to help us move forward. Because remember, a very important formula for change, we have our trigger plus a routine action equals the reward that we want, even if it's negative. So let me explain that. Somebody's upset you, the trigger, plus how you would normally respond, for example, overeating, equals temporary comfort. And it's the action, the overeating part, that you might want to change. You still may have the trigger in your life. You can learn to deal with triggers through your own self-love, self-worth, and boundary setting. But you may still have somebody trigger you. That's always possible. Can't control other people. We can only control our reactions, remember. Plus the routine action. That's the bit we work on to give us the same reward. And it's about finding an action that works for you, and everybody is completely different. One person will love tapping. One person will love massage. One person will love hypnotherapy. One person will love writing. One person, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's about finding what works for you.